As some of you might know, it's not exactly a coincidence that a high percentage of the video games and animation and graphic novels that I care about hail from a place of which existence most people are probably well aware of. Japan. I've had an interest in foreign cultures ever since I was a little girl, so me going into culture studies as soon as I finished high school was pretty much a no-brainer. As it happened, I ended up picking Japanology, the study of Japanese culture and society, as my university major. Now, the bachelor's course for this major commonly includes taking a one-year exchange stay in Japan, which I did. From fall 2013 to summer 2014, I studied under a scholarship at the Tokyo Metropolitan University in Hachioji City. And so, after one exciting year of learning and adventure, I finally came to the conclusion: it's cool. Yeah, that's it. What did you expect? In the end, Japan is a place like any other, with its own customs, ideals, rules, advantages and disadvantages. I was fully prepared for this reality when I first arrived there, so I felt entirely satisfied and happy and excited with what I ended up experiencing. But ever since I've been there, the more I browse around the web, the more I get the feeling that anybody without my background in actually preparing for how non-extreme Japan really is would probably be hit with a pretty bad culture shock if they were ever to actually go there. This is especially true for people whose interest in the country is solely based on their being part of anime fandom. I think it's an open secret that a lot of anime fans see animation as a way to get more acquainted with the country's culture. We tend to approach media we consume and the rumors we hear about them with a kind of "I'll take this for granted" mindset. One-sided, exoticized portrayals of countries in the media don't exactly help with these perceptions, you mind. But of course, the world isn't as simple as that, and it's the same with anime. We're relying on shows and internet gossip about them to get the idea of how the culture behind it runs will most likely only give you the theme park version of what Japan is actually like. And that's why today, in honor of my upcoming 3-week trip through Japan's main island of Honshu, I've decided to do something a little bit different from my usual stick and talk about 5 things Western anime fans believe about Japan that couldn't be any further from the truth. Number 1. Japanese people are all super polite. This is kinda low on the list because there is a basis for the stereotype. However, it's a lot more complex than the media would like you to believe. It needs to be made clear that regardless of their nationality or anything else, people are all different. There's no two people with the exact same personality in the world, so naturally applying stereotypes like they're all nice or they are all polite is thoughtlessly going to make you fall flat on your nose when trying to interact with people. However, there is such a thing as culture-specific upbringing, and the general tendencies with that in Japan are definitely pretty off from what most European or North American people would be used to. Whereas here in Europe, we're usually taught to speak up about our worries, make 100% clear what we mean when we talk about something, and engage in discussion and debate, in Japan the tendency goes more towards teaching children that if you've got anything to say that might upset another person, don't say it. Imply it. Make hints towards it. Dance around the point and send subtle clues in the way you express yourself until the other party gets it. Nudge nudge, wink wink, maybe possibly pretty please. So yeah, whenever you read another staff interview where Japanese creators talk about the troubles they are having with their executives and you think they're just being a little passive-aggressive there, in Japan that's not considered being passive-aggressive. That's more like outright complaining. There's a lot of theories as to why the strong tendency developed in Japanese culture out of all places, many of which suggest that it's due to the density of Japan's population, forcing the nation's collective psyche to develop coping strategies to function while sharing such a small space with each other. It doesn't mean that these people are especially nice or especially dishonest. It just means that they've learned to stick to watching their manners more in order to avoid unnecessary conflict. And also to read between the lines and be able to tell what other Japanese people sugarcoating their own opinions actually mean. Number 2. Weirdly flavored food, everywhere, always. Okay, this is one I see crop up in magazines and on news networks a lot, and it's one thing that honestly left me just a little bit disappointed when I actually got to Japan. When talking about crazy Japanese people, this is one of the favorite, not age-restricted topics people like to bring up. The weird flavors and food ideas that apparently must be everywhere in the country. I mean, look, it's right here. Chicken-flavored ice cream, salty watermelon Pepsi, Kit Kat flavored like everything ever. And are those fried crickets? These Japanese people must have crazy, varied tastes. Yeah, no. The truth of the matter is that many of these strange flavors that our media like to showcast as an integral part of Japanese menus are actually just limited edition products reporters happen to stumble upon in the short window of time they were actually available in stores. And by short window, I mean sometimes not even 3 months. Well, it is true that Japanese companies love to put out new crazy flavors to establish products a few times a year to see what sticks. Only a few of these flavors actually do end up sticking and becoming regular items in stores. And even then, many remain season restricted. Think of them as the McWhips of Japanese food. Fitting given the Japanese fast food chains like to pull this thing too. A lot. As far as I know, chicken ice cream and salt melon Pepsi never really caught on, and as for fried crickets, the Japanese consider these just as much of a potential there as you would, so don't worry. Number 3. Japanese people love foreigners. Look, I do get where the stereotype comes from. It's hard to explain, but I really do. I mean, after all, when you watch anime, play JRPGs, or even just listen to J-pop, there's signs of a fascination with foreign cultures everywhere. English and German, Grish overuse, high school girls talking overexcitedly about French boyfriends, Nicolas Cage advertising for pachinko parlors. But in the end, that's all it is. A fascination, curiosity, a gimmick. Just because Japanese media love to make foreign cultures a topic in one way or another, that doesn't exactly mean the Japanese as a nation know especially much about what interacting with these foreign cultures is like compared to how much other nations know about it. A personal example. In the 10 months I spent in Japan, there were multiple instances of waiters insisting on giving me knife and fork rather than chopsticks, convinced I wouldn't be able to eat with them, multiple instances of people staring at me while eating, then asking me in a dumbstruck manner how I could ever have managed to learn how to eat with chopsticks, and also multiple instances of people reacting to my ability to speak whole, grammatically correct sentences in Japanese as if I was using some form of voodoo witchcraft. Now, when all these instances were actually pretty amusing to me, and I was somewhat flattered by people looking at me like I was the most impressive thing since sliced bread, it also made me question what these people expected foreign exchange students to be like, and how low these expectations really had to be for me to exceed them so noticeably. It's a sad fact that a strong case can be made for Japan as a whole having a serious problem with xenophobia. If you've ever been chased off a Japanese-dominated internet platform such as Pixiv or Nico Nico while being called gaijin by an angry mob of Japanese users, let me assure you that that's not an isolated incident. There's also the fact that a number of popular Japanese internet platforms have been actively locking foreigners out of using them for years, with only a couple of them opening up a little very recently. And before you go and say, well, that's just the internet for you, let me just inform you that Japan is currently ruled by the LDP, a right-wing party with a strong focus on conservative nationalism, and that their approval ratings give no indication that this is going to change anytime soon. Now, I've got a lot of friends in Japan, and there are really a lot of people there that are just as hospitable and friendly to foreigners as you'd imagine, well, good people to be, but that still doesn't negate the existence of people who only see foreigners as walking stereotypes. As long as you stay in company of the right kind of people, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. But just step out of these boundaries by a little and you might quickly find yourself on the receiving end of some rather cold and uncomfortable treatment. Number 4. Anime characters look white. Now, this is one of the most common ones I hear, and probably by far the one that grinds my gears the most, so excuse me if this following section has me sounding more than just a little upset. It might be that you don't quite understand why exactly I'm getting so angry over this specific belief, so just like the previous number, this is going to require some explanation. So allow me to start with a counterexample. Here we have the titular main character of Kim Possible, an American Disney cartoon that aired in the early 2000s. Kim Possible is white. Now, how do we know that she's white? Because the dialogue in every other episode says so? Well, then let's just ignore that for a moment. Just looking at her design alone, how else do we know that she is, in fact, white? Well, her skin is rather light, but there's plenty of Asian people whose skin tone is very close to, if not identical to what is most common in Caucasian people, so that's not all too relevant. So next, let's look at her face shape. Clearly that's... so wait, it's a circle. Her face is a circle. Nobody has a circular face in real life. Like, no one. Let's strike that. But her hair might be dyed. Red hair is not something only white people can have, folks. But her nose is actually pretty small for the nose of a white person, so that's not a good argument at all. But her eyes don't look like the eyes of any human being that ever has or will ever live, so what the hell? So if this is all true, then why is it that when we look at the strong, stylized character, most of us probably immediately think of her as a white girl? Because surprise, surprise, most of us grew up with media that surrounded us with an abundance of white people. When animated characters are drawn with not enough distinguishing features to doubtlessly assign them to any specific group of people known to us, the human brain resorts to defaulting back to its lowest common denominator, which for most of us and our experiences with the media is going to be the basic blueprint of a white woman or man. That has nothing to do with what the character was actually meant to be, and everything with how the human brain and its constant need to categorize things simply works. For years, questionable analysis has tried to interpret some sort of national inferiority complex of Japan towards America into the way anime characters are usually designed, but the matter of fact is that anime characters usually aren't designed to look like white people. They're designed to look like dolls, in the same way cartoon characters are often designed to look like dolls, simplified and easily relatable for a majority of the population. When you analyze how the typical anime character is designed, cartoonishly large eyes, noses so small they vanish in some shots, and extremely simplified facial structures, these characters are so stylized that most of them really don't display all too many distinguishing features that can clearly be assigned to any sort of ethnic background. This means that anybody looking at these characters will see them as the most common type of person they see in their media every day, which for Japanese people will probably be other Japanese people, and for people in the West will probably be white Americans. Now, of course, there's Japanese people who think white actors look better when portraying anime characters than Japanese people do, because white people's eyes to them look so cartoonishly large that it looks fitting. But on the other hand, when you go on Japanese image boards and bring up this debate, most of the replies will be that anime characters can't be white because their faces' profiles are too flat. So yeah, in the end, this isn't really a matter of anime representing some kind of collective Japanese inferiority complex. This is a matter of whether your brain focuses on their eyes or their noses. Number 5. The Japanese language indicates gender. Wait. I need a break before I tackle this one. Okay. Good. Let me start by saying that there, again, is a basis in this belief. However, the internet over time has badly exaggerated developments of said basis, and anime really didn't help. So, in most languages, gender manifests most prominently in the form of grammatical gender, also known as the genus. This is what decides whether you are calling something he, she, it, or they in a sentence. It's also what decides that the moon is referred to with female pronouns in French but with male pronouns in German, despite being a giant rock in space and not, a person. Grammatical gender is what defines the role gender plays in any given language. Japanese doesn't have it. At all. This is because not only do Japanese nouns have neither gender nor plural, the concept of the pronoun itself is something so inherently alien to the Japanese language that a large number of stand-in words had to be created specifically to cope with translating foreign texts into Japanese. The words kare and kanojo, meaning that male person and that female person, were virtually unused until translation of American texts made it necessary to distinguish between he and she. And even then, today, kare and kanojo are still used a lot more frequently, meaning boyfriend and girlfriend, rather than he and she in everyday language. This is why when two people are talking about a third party in Japanese, identifying the gender of said third party is often virtually impossible, simply for the lack of pronouns or gendered nouns. Which is also what leads to a lot of instances of mistaken gender in anime, which are borderline impossible to translate. In fact, even in real life, the Japanese language makes it incredibly easy to leave both your own gender as well as the gender of any given second or third party entirely unspecified, without having to use any form of non-traditional language. Now, that isn't to say that it isn't true that Japanese has such a thing as gender-specific language, as a wide variety of specifically feminine or masculine dialects of the language do exist. However, even this isn't as clear-cut as anime likes to make it look, since in real life people will often be using gender-neutral language when speaking to strangers or in business environments. And especially in recent times, more and more people are starting to mix the dialects, with especially girls using more masculine language becoming more and more common. Also, unless you're speaking to very close friends, most people you meet will be referring to themselves as watashi, and to you as last name san, regardless of gender. Also, women being referred to as kun is a lot more common than you'd probably believe, especially in business contexts. I would also like to note that contrary to what Wikipedia for some reason states, Japanese has a massive number of phonologically unisex names as well, including many names that you'd believe to be specifically masculine or feminine on first glance, but really aren't. The idea that Japanese is supposed to be one of the most gender-indicative languages in the world is one that has seriously baffled me ever since I first started studying the language, seeing how even my own mother tongue, German, is a lot more clear-cut when it comes to gender than Japanese is, often making me wish that German was more like Japanese, simply because of what a gigantic, unnecessary, and generally frustrating clusterfuck grammatical gender is in most European languages, making it one part of my own language that I genuinely did not miss upon learning Japanese. So there you have it. 5 things about Japan that I think anime fans in the West tend to have misconceptions of. Now, please remember, this is all based on my own experiences and personal research and is not supposed to give any sort of generalized blanket statement about Japanese culture as a whole. Please take this all with a grain of salt, and if your own experiences contradict any of what I've said in this video, feel free to share your own stories or opinions in the comments. As always, likes and new subscribers are helpful and appreciated, and if you want to support my content, check out my Patreon or any of my social media pages. Well then, bye!